Well, you know what's really interesting is our first DEMA that we went to, the big international show, for those of you that don't know, I had probably 30 or 40 instructors walk up to my booth and say, you know, I got certified 3 years ago or 5 years ago as an adaptive instructor, and they said, you know, I was so excited, and then I didn't know what to do, you know, and after like 20 guys come up to you, you start going, okay, there's kind of a business model here that needs to be developed. And so as a nonprofit, we decided that what we were going to do at Diveheart is we were going to try to raise the level of the water for all boats. So, you know, I'm really honored today to have Doug McNeese here, because Doug represents one of the major training agencies in the world. And to have him here at our second Adaptive Scuba Symposium, you know, he's kind of laid the groundwork now, you know, and kind of set the precedent, and I'm sure you're going to see others. When we started, you know, there are other agencies out there that didn't have, you know, other major training agencies that didn't have programs, and now they do. And part of the reason I think they do is because I think its time has come, number one, but also what we try to do is we try to promote adaptive scuba everywhere we go. So we'll go to Our World Underwater and Beneath the Sea and stuff like that. But my background's media. I was with the Tribune and WGN Radio and CLTV News, helped start up a TV station. And it was my blind daughter that really inspired me to leave a great career and start Diveheart. She was blind from birth. She got involved in downhill skiing, and that kind of turned her life around, because she was struggling with being blind at the time. And all of a sudden, it was Aaron the skier and not Aaron the blind kid. And what really impressed me was I had friends that said, Jim, I was always afraid to take on this challenge in my life until I saw your daughter skiing. And I thought, you know what, if she can ski and she's blind, I can do this. And I went, wow, this is really powerful. You get this ripple effect, right, that touches other people's lives. So I thought, you know, I'm young enough, I can roll the dice. If I fall on my face starting this nonprofit, I could always go back to the media business. And that was in '96. I started teaching adaptive scuba in '97. And now we're in our 10th year. We incorporated Diveheart in 2001. And we linked to Doug, to SSI and to SDI. They have a program. I'm an HSA, Handicapped Scuba Association instructor trainer. I'm also an instructor trainer for SDI, which has the Scubility program. And also a PADI instructor. And what I started doing, do we have PADI instructors in the room? You know, I mean, when I started as a PADI instructor, if I couldn't get them into an open water card, what I would do is I would put them in a scuba diver card. And I thought, you know what, at least they can dive with a professional, right? And now, having trained a lot of instructors and dive masters and course directors around the world, you know, we've kind of fine-tuned our program and realized that, you know, it's really, we haven't, you know, had a problem since I've been doing this since '97, but, you know, having two buddies in the water, like Doug was saying earlier, safety is absolutely imperative. You know, and what you're going to find is you're going to find some resistance. You know, I had some folks, I had a lady you're going to see a picture of in a minute with no arms, and she was able to do everything with her feet. Jessica Cox, she flew a plane. She personally flew a private plane from Phoenix to Chicago to take this training, and then she did everything with her feet. Removed her gear, you know, cleared her mask, all this stuff. She was right-footed, she said. Yeah, and then she didn't want to dive with fins on. You know, that's like putting mitts on your hands, right? So she was upset with her because I gave her a certification where she needed two buddies. But I said, you know, when you start to descend, if you don't have fins on, you know what's going to happen. You know, you need to, and so we had this thing, and you're going to run into that out there, and some of you probably have run into it already. Somebody who has a disability wants to get that open water card a lot of times. And what your job is partially is to convince them that, you know, it's not so much about getting that open water card so you can dive with anybody, because we've all dove enough that you know, there's people out there I wouldn't want to dive with, you know, so much less put Ashley with them. So you're going to run into some of that, and that's some of the stuff we touch on in our course. I don't know how many of you know who Matt Johnston is. Matt Johnston is the only ventilator diver in the world, from Minnesota. You know, he's an incredible guy. I thought diving with quadriplegics was hard until I went on a trip with him, and all of a sudden, I had a new appreciation, because Matt's dad, who is an incredible caretaker And I was a caretaker for my grandmother for several years before she passed away, so I have total respect for caretakers. But Matt's father had to evacuate his esophagus, you know, suck out all the mucus and stuff so that he had more of an open airway when he went underwater. And every time I was on a dive with him, his ventilator failed. So you had to have an ambu bag there, and you had to have a nurse on hand who was a diver. And it was really interesting. But this guy's spirit is unbelievable. And if you get a chance to go to his website, definitely do. Our goal is to get him, we deal with Northwestern engineering students who have built some adaptive scuba gear for us. They built a really long dump hose for Jessica so she could reach it with her right foot. Well, I said to them, I said, I want him to be able to go deeper than 15 feet as long as his hose. And so what they did is they actually have created a sealed container, hooked up a scuba tank and regulators and stuff, and made it so the ventilator could take the air from the scuba tank, deliver it to Matt, and then dump it out in, you know, open circuit like you and I when we exhale. We're trying to raise the money now to do that. He's 33 years old. His life expectancy is 30. So we don't have a lot of time, but we're moving on. If you know anybody who's got $22,000, and I want 2 ventilator systems, because I've seen his ventilator go out, and I don't want to be 30 or 40 feet underwater when it goes out. I want to be able to flip a switch and go, okay, you know. We've been fortunate to work with folks with all sorts of different disabilities. The lady there is Erica. Erica is blind and deaf, basically Helen Keller. You know, when you start doing this, and those of you that have done this, you know, you go to school. These people take you to school, man. You know, I mean, I could stand up here and talk all day, and we could tell you about all sorts of cerebral palsy and all sorts of different disabilities and what the symptoms are and what, you know, what they can do and what they can't do. But you really learn by doing. And what I encourage people who are starting out to do is, you know, don't jump into the Matt Johnson category right away. You know, start working with amputees. Start working with people who are high functioning, maybe guys or gals who have a strong upper body, who maybe have just, you know, are paraplegic or something, but pretty functional. They can transfer around a lot. And I think Jim said, you just ask them and they'll tell you. And that's where you go to school. It's like, hey, how can I help you transfer? You know, not grabbing them and helping them. I had a special forces guy who was visually impaired, and he was just learning to navigate around Chicago, and Gabe probably knows him. A Good Samaritan came up and grabbed his arm, was going to help him across the street in Chicago. Guy's special forces and he's blind, and you grab him. You know, what's he going to do? He takes the guy down, and the guy's going, hey, I was just trying to help, and the cop's coming over and stuff. It was amazing. But what we do with Erica is like, how am I going to take this blind and deaf woman diving? So I got a hold of Rick. Rick's a buddy of Gabe's. He's totally blind. And so what he did is he learned to tactily sign with Erica. And then what we did is we put a full face mask. After we got her all acclimated, taught her how to, everything that was going to happen. She knew everything, you know, to expect. And then I had her repeat it back to me through Rick. You know, I said, does she understand how to equalize? Does she understand what she has to do when she recovers a regulator? And he asked her, and she would respond. I go, okay. And then what we did is we put a full face mask with communications on Rick. And now I have one too. So now I can talk to Rick. Rick can sign to her. She can sign back. And Rick can talk back to me, right? The only problem we had is when all of a sudden they're going crazy like this, you know, and I'm going, oh my God, what's wrong? I'm going, Rick, is she okay? And, you know, they're going and going and going. And then finally comes back, he goes, her fin's loose. I'm like, oh my God. I go, dude, you're going to give me a heart attack. So what we did in Cozumel is we dove in tandem like this. I held on the very first dives we did in the quarry. I held on to Rick's valve, and then we had another instructor hold on to Erica. They held hands during the dive and talked. And then what we do is we bring them down and let them see stuff. And there's some really high-speed, cool pictures that I'm not going to show you because they were handling things that politically they shouldn't have been handling, but she got to see a ton of great stuff, and it didn't harm any crabs during the filming or shooting of those photos. I said, Anna, we're coming down, get your kids together. We're going to, part of our training is we don't just do the classroom and pool, and we probably have doubled the amount of pool work that was in it when I started. We do about 20 hours of pool. That's really where the heavy lifting is. And that's where you really learn empathy, like Doug was saying. You learn how to be blind, you learn how to be a paraplegic, you learn how to be a quadriplegic. And we don't just deal with physical disabilities, we deal with cognitive disabilities. So we have kids with autism and Down syndrome and guys with traumatic brain injuries. And when you start taking those guys in the water, now you really go to school. It's like, you know, you really have to be focused because you know, you're worried about them losing their regulator and stuff. But Anna really took us to school here. She has no arms and no legs. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get her back in the boat? And we worked it out. We worked it out. She doesn't have a spinal cord injury, so she was able to kind of wiggle back, you know. So once we transferred her up to the dive platform, which was, and she had enough of a stub, we were able to put our hand under her armpit and kind of pin down her stub, so the guys on the boat could guide her up as we pushed up, you know, from the bottom. And then she was able to wiggle back, and then I kind of got down and put my arms around her, you know, and then the guys would guide her up, and we were able to get her in her chair and everything. It was really quite an experience. And then there's devices out there. Guys from Pegasus Thrusters just donated a couple underwater propulsion vehicles to us. This is I can't remember the name of this, but this is Chris. He's an incomplete quad. He was on the same trip. And these guys can move around the reef a lot faster than we can. You know, once you teach them how to use these things and not to hold their breath while they're ascending, you know what I mean? You know, it's incredible. And Anna, what we did is we got her neutral and we got her independent, and she was able to do everything with her breath. Now, she was in Bonaire, so there wasn't a lot of current, but you know, she's coming to Cozumel with us in May. We've got to fly her on a trip to Cozumel in May. And if you guys want some good experience working with people with disabilities, we're going to have a lot of people with disabilities on that trip. And Dave in the back, Dave Zygmunt, our treasurer, now coordinates all of our trips. And I think last summer we did 5 trips during the summer with Shriners Hospital, Rehab Institute of Chicago, Illinois Center for Rehabilitation and Education, a park district, a Special Olympic swim team. And that was on top of the trip we did to Cozumel, and so we try to do some stuff out of the country, try to do some stuff for adults, but the stuff for kids that we do, you know, I know Gabe was talking about the fun he was having in Cozumel. The stuff for the kids we do, we have them sign a full value contract, which Sarah will tell you is all about, you know, having respect for each other, not abusing, you know, not imbibing in alcohol or drugs or any of that stuff. It's all about that, and challenge by choice. This is Anna. I thought the silhouette was pretty cool. This is one of the instructors in Bonaire. And actually, I had to go down to Houston twice because her instructors were a little apprehensive about working with her and some of the kids from the hospital. So I went down, did another Discover Scuba. Then I invited Anna to Bonaire and said to the instructor, I said, you got to come with to get some experience, you know. And at the very beginning of the week, he was very, you know, concerned that he was going to hurt her and he wasn't going to do something right. And by the end of it, he looked like he'd been doing it his whole life. So these trips are really great times to do stuff like that. And I've done stuff like that with different organizations. We work with other nonprofits, and I've gone out with their instructors and you know, just you kind of hold their hand, you kind of let them, you know, do things and make some mistakes. This is Jessica. Jessica doesn't have any stubs, so Jessica, you just kind of support her as she goes up the ladder. But it was amazing. She was able to do everything with her feet. And like I said, that was I think 2 summers ago, and we totally went to school on her. Weighting, one of the biggest issues. One of the things we spent a lot of time in the pool doing. Something we've added to the training is we weight double amputees. It's like, how do you do that? Well, we bind the guy's legs, we pull them up behind their body, and I don't know if you do this, Doug, but we bind their legs, pull both their legs up behind their body, and take all their weights off, and all of a sudden we let them go, you know, and depending upon whether you have a steel tank or a back inflated BCD, you know, see which way you float. And then what you start doing is you start playing with weights. You start, and that, if you can get that down in the pool, man, you're gonna save yourself a ton of time. You know, I've had people come up to me, DEMA, just this last DEMA, they came up, some instructors said, gosh, you know, yeah, we dive with